All right, and we're back. So now we're going to talk about another important topic, which we'll address a little bit more in class too. That's lobbying. So lobbying is advocating a position to the government. Lobbyists are the people that can explain diverse interests of trade associations, of peak associations, of corporations, of individuals, of any other kind of interest group. They can take all those diverse interests, whoever they're working for, and they can explain those things in a language that politicians can understand. Okay? They're like translators. However, like translators, they can make mistakes. Now, that can be a deliberate mistake or an accidental mistake. They can twist the facts in the interest of the groups they represent, or they can simply be ignorant. Okay? But what lobbyists do is they condense a vast amount of information into bite-sized pieces so that politicians can make some sort of an informed, albeit possibly biased, decision on a given issue. Now, in theory, lobbyists who lack integrity will be excommunicated from Washington, D.C. So they're supposed to tell the truth, but of course, they do represent the interests of corporations, so they have to present the issues in such a way that shows the best face of their clients. Okay? But think of a lobbyist as like a translator. Now, there are a variety of methods used in lobbying. You have contact lobbying. You have background lobbying. And grassroots lobbying. Okay. So contact lobbying. That's when you have a professional lobbyist and they meet with a government official face to face, like in a meeting. They can meet over phone, email, Skype, whatever. But there's kind of a face to face or a direct connection. I am lobbyist A, and I am advocating a position for a client directly to an elected official. Now, you can also do background lobbying. So any politician, I mean, if you ever see people that are important, I'm talking politicians, diplomats, generals, whoever these people are, they're never like alone. They always have this entourage with them. These are staff members, these are secretaries, these are policy experts, all sorts of kinds of people. Okay, every politician has experts. Okay, some politicians are very smart people, but they may not know everything about physics or science. So they of course have a science policy expert. They may not be the most organized, so they probably have a variety of administrative assistants to help them manage their day. They may not know everything about everything, so they rely on their own staff of experts. Now, background lobbying means that a lobbyist meets with these experts on a politician's staff and tries to convince those experts the merits of their position, and then those experts will in turn tell that to the person that they work for, the politician or elected official. And then, of course, there is the grassroots effort, and that's basically when a lobbying firm goes out to the public and tells them, hey, write your senator or politician and tell them that you believe this, this, and this. Okay, so it's where the public begins to put pressure onto an elected official. Now, there's a lot of regulation of lobbyists. I don't know how effective all of it is. Some of it's like the Lobbying Disclosure Act. The House and Senate have certainly adopted certain rules to prevent the appearance of impropriety. One of the biggest things is bribery. And we'll talk a lot about corruption in this lecture a little bit later on. But, it's a criminal act for a public official to ask or receive any sort of gift, gratuity, financial, quid pro quo, I do this in exchange for what, tied to an official act. So you cannot expect a politician to do something that you ask them to do just because you've given them some sort of financial or service-based compensation. And this is what we call bribery. So bribery is exchanging something of value tied to an official act. Okay. Now, there's also a wide variety of things that our text and some of the slide decks discuss about the various legislation that attempts to limit corporate influence, particularly in federal elections. By the way, federal elections are things looking at president, vice president, any representative, or senator. Okay? Now, there's a wide variety of concepts that are discussed, legislation that is discussed, that attempts to limit corporate influence. We can talk about those in class if you have any questions on them. However, legislation in this field is changing so rapidly that by the time that you graduate or by the time that you work for a lobbying firm, you'll have to know these things, and it'll all be new and different than whatever we're discussing. If you want to discuss them in class, I'm happy to do that. I won't discuss them in great length in these videos. A couple of concepts that you will need to know, though, are political action committees. Is this showing up? Okay. Pen's running a little bit dry. Okay, so you got political action committees, or PAC. Now, if you remember these, those of you that were watching the Saturday Night Live interpretation of the Democratic debates, they had Larry David pretending to be Bernie Sanders. And they said, well, what about your super PAC? And Larry David said, I don't have a super PAC, I don't have a PAC, I don't even have a backpack. Well, that's kind of a similar concept. Political action committees typically carry a company's name, and they make campaign contributions. And these are done through contributions of employees. Okay? So they'll go around at work and say, hey, would you like to donate $10 to support this candidate or support this issue? And individual employees give money. It's not directly from the corporate treasury. Even where I'm working right now, we have a PAC that supports our labor union. I think we give $10 a month or something to the PAC. I can't remember what it is. And then that PAC will represent our interests to the state government. And again, this is another issue. PAC officers are usually corporate employees. So it's separate from the corporation in terms of where the finances come from, but it's still officially tied to the corporation itself. And there's no actual dollar limit that a PAC can raise. It's an unlimited amount of money that a PAC can raise because it's coming from contributions of individual employees, and that money's not really tracked or traced. Okay, another thing we have is soft and hard money. Okay. Soft money is money that's unregulated as the source or amount under federal election law. Now, hard money is spent and raised under strict contribution limits under federal election law. Now, corporations, again, are barred from contributing directly to federal campaigns, but they can give an unlimited amount of soft money to national party committees. So if you wanted to support a particular political candidate, you couldn't do that with an unlimited amount of money, but you could give a lot of money to the national party itself, and that would be okay, and you'd know that the national party would be supporting that political candidate. So it's kind of an indirect way of supporting someone. Now, soft money can also be used for issue advertising. I'm sure you've seen these things on TV that says this candidate supports this, this, and this, and that's not good, so vote for this other person. Or this person supports this, this, and this, and that's great, so vote for this person. So that's what they're talking about there. Again, there's been a wide variety of reform legislation for political activity. I won't talk too much about them because that's something that's always changing. But what I do want you to take note of is understanding why PACs and lobbying and all this exists. It exists for two very different reasons. Okay, there's two different ways to look at it. Okay, so the first is some aspect dealing with free speech versus kind of corruption. So lobbying is a form of speech. Donating to political campaigns is a form of free speech. It is an expression of what you believe or what you want. So therefore, it's a form of speech and is protected under the Constitution. Now, to reason by analogy, you have to ask yourself, well, how much free speech are we actually entitled to? If I can give $1 million to a political campaign, should I be allowed to give that $1 million to the political campaign, and somebody who has only $10 to give to an opposing campaign, their voice is kind of drowned out? Is that right or not? I mean, think about two people having a discussion. One person whispers very quietly like this, and the other person has a giant megaphone that they're screaming in at you. So just because the person has that megaphone, does that mean that they're entitled to use that megaphone and drown out the other person's voice? It's the same thing with finances. Okay. So lobbying is generally seen as a form of free speech, but at what point does that free speech become so overwhelming that it drowns out other voices? And at what point does it also start crossing into the lines of corruption? Another aspect that I think is one of the most important problems in business, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in this course and a whole lot in the sequel to this course, is bounded rationality. Bounded rationality, think of it as opportunity cost, but it's cognitive, it's mental. So nobody can know everything and be an expert in everything at all times. Okay? And nobody can pay attention to multiple tasks at all times. Let me give a couple of examples. Okay? If I give you 2 assignments and I tell you to do them both, you're probably going to do one assignment at a time because your mind can't focus on 2 assignments at the same time. That's one example of bounded rationality. Now, a more common example and more important to this discussion, example of bounded rationality, is the fact that nobody, no matter how smart they are, will be an expert in everything, and nobody, no matter how smart they are, can evaluate all possibilities at the same time. So I'll give an example. I may be a decent business professor, you'll have to tell me. However, I will never be a physicist. I'm probably not intelligent enough, I don't have the training, I don't have the years of experience, I will never be a physicist. So if you tell me something about physics that's very, very important, I mean, I really can't have any sort of a meaningful discussion with you. I'll tell you just like I used to tell one of my friends. You may be giving me Nobel Prize worthy material, but I'm not competent enough to evaluate that. Okay? So what I would do is I would ask a physicist, hey, what do you think about this other person's idea? Is that a good idea? Does that make sense or not? Okay? That's an example of bounded rationality. Now, how does that apply to business and politics? Well, businesses, through the donation of money, that's kind of a proxy for their voice, and politicians will hear the large contributions given to them for their campaigns. It focuses their attention on one series of issues versus another. And the same thing with lobbying. Lobbyists have a mission, and they are specialists in explaining a variety of complex issues in a way that a politician can understand. Can your average politician understand the intricacies of a biotech firm? Probably not. But a lobbyist can explain that in a way that that politician can understand and make some sort of hopefully informed decision. Okay, these are both examples of bounded rationality in action. And that's the source of lobbying and, unfortunately, even corruption in elections. So at this point, this wraps up our discussion about business and politics. We'll continue this discussion in class, but I hope you've enjoyed the lecture and found it informative. And again, my name is Duncan Pelly, and I'll see you next time.